this story is actually a few weeks old. I believe we were talking about since January 6th when Pasta Johnny and I all attended. Steve was there, Jason Burmas was there. We knew that this was going to be used and manipulated to pretty much extinguish our civil liberties and our civil rights. And that's exactly what happened thereafter. There was, the division of the left versus the right, which has always been divided. But in this way, it was done more so as an attempt to have people become police informants, have people start really loving the FBI. And, we said from the start that this was a psyop. And it turns out we've been proven right in terms of the undercover cops working within this whole, what they called an insurrection, what we knew was more of a riot. And we knew that any sort of restriction on censorship or on protesting or on any sort of riot was going to always come back on the left. We told them this from the start. This is what always happens. So it turns out that is unfortunately the case for an anarchist named Daniel Baker, who was sentenced to federal prison in Florida, a capital threat case. So he's actually from here. And Daniel Baker was a U.S. Army veteran who was a turned overseas militia member who posted a violent, quote unquote, call to arms online ahead of the feared right-wing protest at the Florida Capitol. And he was sentenced this a few weeks ago. And the U.S. District Judge Alan Windsor sentenced him to 44 months, which equates to about 3.5 years in prison during a hearing at the federal courthouse in Tallahassee. He also ordered him to serve 3 years of federal supervision following his release. So kind of like 3 years probation. On January 15th, the FBI descended on Baker's High Road apartment, arresting him after he posted online calls to rise up with, quote, every caliber available to confront the, quote, armed racist mob in Florida's capital. So the thing was, they suspected that the Trump supporters, the patriots, were going to go to the Florida Capitol and try to, have another little insurrection there. So he was calling people to oppose him, all the anti-fascists to oppose him. Jason Cootie is the acting U.S. Attorney General for the Northern District of Florida, said that the sentence should serve as a significant deterrent to those who would solicit others to join them in conducting criminal acts rather than engage in lawful debate. The free exercise of speech is central to our democracy. However, the defendant's threats of armed violence to inhibit expression of political views different than his own are both unlawful and dangerous. And then the last part of this article, Baker's arrest was the first in the nation related to the threats that surfaced after the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol by supporters of then President Donald Trump. Not an insurrection, but okay. His threats, however, came from the other end of the political spectrum, the far left. He issued them amid warnings from the FBI about possible violence at state houses across the nation from the right-wing protesters. So this is an anarchist, or who calls himself an anarchist, an anti-fascist. He was telling people on Facebook, hey, I'm going to go to the capital of Florida, and we're going to oppose these right-wing fascists that, want to arm an insurrection or a coup against, our current government. So he was actually convicted, while pretty much nobody else has been convicted when it came to January 6th in Washington, D.C. So the left is saying, oh, see, like the government is right wing and they always like punish leftists. Well, no shit. That was always going to be the case. This is no surprise at all. But what's hypocritical is that they are still trying to pretend that what these other people did is any different when it isn't. And so they're playing team sports. Once again, the left and the right are playing team sports. And this sort of just attack on any sort of free speech, a Facebook post can now get you jailed and arrested. And especially if you are left wing. So when you're supporting the attempt to call this an insurrection or a coup, and you're supporting shooting people like Ashley Babbitt or all of these things, eventually you're supporting that to happen to your side because the fucking people in power are not on your side. Anything to say on that, Pasta?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, how many times have we told it? I think we've said this a million times, like, oh, geez, it's not going to be used just for one side, and that's why you can never play team sports. It's going to be used for both sides, and they will do that. It's about, it's not about left versus right. It's versus up versus down, and upstairs wants to keep downstairs, silent, and that's all it is and stuff. They want to keep the people in line. So they'll use this incidents like January 6th to further infringe on our civil liberties, spy on us, hound us, do whatever. I mean, how about like the FBI coming to Magnus's door and stuff, saying these things are just going to get way out of hand. They're going to be watching every single move we make, and they're going to have their minions come on over and support them. So just buckle in, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get worse.
I do got to say that the reason they're going to go after more against anarchists, though, and against people with these more revolutionary left-wing views, because they're not patriots. They tend to be the ones that say they want to get rid of the current government more. So they are naturally going to go after those people. They always will. However, it's not to say that you should be focused on the other, more so focused on the people in power that are trying to weaponize this and, pit people against each other. Now, the Intercept, of course, did a whole article on this, pretty much an op-ed that this person wrote, and she pointed out a couple things, right? She talked about how he was like, this is so unfair because they always go after only the left, but these are the same people that were cheering for them going after the right for pretty much protesting and rioting. I mean, the hypocrisy just, goes on. So this is what she wrote. She said, Baker, a 34-year-old yoga teacher and emergency medical technician trainee, had no previous criminal convictions and has already been held for 10 months of harsh pretrial detention, including 7 months in solitary confinement. He never brought a weapon near a government building. He amassed no armed anti-fascist forces. He made no threats on a single individual. All of that's true. But what's also true is that the vast majority of the people there, I still have yet to find a weapon that was at the Capitol either. Like the whole thing, they brought weapons. That didn't happen. They're still kind of saying, on the Capitol, it was an armed insurrection when it really actually wasn't. She said Baker will face considerably more prison time than most January 6th defendants. Yes, because that's how it's always going to be. Because a lot of those people that were there on January 6th, we found out were FBI, undercovers, and the whole thing isn't to punish people for that because they actually pose no threat. These people weren't going to overthrow the government. Like, that's not what this was about. They were pissed off about the election and they were being gaslit and told that the election was, that everything was sure and that they couldn't question it. So that's what this was about. It wasn't about like anything of an armed insurrection. She continues to say, if there are moral arguments for physically confronting fascists, and here is a double standard, and I believe there are, they would have been of scant relevance in Baker's case. Zero such confrontations took place or appeared on the horizon, and no far-right mobs amassed at the Florida Capitol or on Biden's inauguration. This should have been a straightforward First Amendment case with Baker's online speech, albeit bellicose, judged as constitutionally protected. Instead, the formerly unhoused veteran has been made a victim of government efforts to draw false equivalencies between fascistic far-right forces and the anti-fascists who would see them opposed. You cannot say that only your side can protest. Unfortunately, these people that you consider fascists, some of them maybe, but the vast majority of them, again, were not at all. And so she's still using that same, they were fascists and they must be opposed. Okay, fine, you can call them that. But then by all means, don't get angry when it gets turned around on you as well, because all you're doing is allowing for this to continue to happen. Obviously, I don't believe in fascism, but the fascism that we're having right now is so far greater than anything any Trump supporter has ever done, because they don't have that power. These people do not understand power. Here we are again. They think like, oh yeah, like this, it's okay if anti-fascists oppose Trump and whatever. But like that, what about the people opposing mandates? I don't see these people talking about that. So it just shows you like how the Intercept is extremely pretty much just shit libs at this point with the way they create differences when you have to be consistent, right? You should be consistent. People should be allowed to protest. If you're going to call it a riot, then all of it should be a riot. Otherwise, we just keep dividing each other and getting absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and that's what the purpose of the Intercept article is to do, is to divide once again, to pick people like, look what they're doing to them, they wouldn't do it to them, and what, you know. Can we go over exactly what was said in his statement? Was it a Facebook a Facebook post? Was it a tweet?
It was a Facebook post where he literally said that they needed to go and fight the fascists. He said, I think I read it already. I think I'm pretty sure it was. He said, we need to rise up with every caliber available to confront the armed racist mobs in Florida's capital.
That's exactly.
So again,
yeah.
That's exactly what. I'm sorry.
That's exactly what he said. I mean, there was no like something about
that was quoted.
Okay.
That was quoted.
So he didn't say grab a gun and let a fascist know what's what, anything like that. It was pretty much we just did rise up.
No, I mean it's a violation of our free speech. I mean, it's kind of, I understand why somebody could argue that, but really he's saying we need to rise up and blah blah blah. Bernie Sanders had said something like that. You could go to any politician on the left or even on the right that has said things like that. Just, we need to fight back. We need to rise up against these. He called them racist mobs. Obviously, not everybody there was racist, but the point is that is not, it's still a free speech thing, right? It's still for less they try to get Trump on though too, right? Like it's just kind of like once you go down this rabbit hole of, oh, they said this and that, like then it's like, wait a minute, like so now I can't say anything on Facebook because you're gonna arrest me. This is out of hand. To me, that's the big thing, is that now none of us can say anything, or they can literally go to your house and say, oh, you said this. We've already seen that with people like AOC, when she felt threatened, when I think it was it Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio. Also, somebody said something about Marco Rubio, and the police showed up to that person's house. We've seen what happened with that person who was in LA. And
do we have that was about as far as how many people liked the Facebook thing or how many people followed it?
No.
So we don't know if it was like, okay. Obviously, once again, too, the tactic of like, I think, buddy, your anger's in the wrong place. Like, you need to be protesting and rise up against the government, maybe not the other people in the streets. And that's obviously, I might disagree with him in ideology, but once again, I don't see anything wrong with what he did. Definitely not to merit the fact that he should be going to prison. If they want to suspend his Facebook for a little while or something, you know what I'm saying? And some stuff was said in the chats or whatnot. And I don't know, and I would think that there would be something like, okay, well, they intercepted plans after this Facebook. If they're using the post itself, this is really fucking draconian over here. You know what I'm saying? And we better watch our when we say wherever we say it. So, it's a little odd to say that it's just a Facebook post alone. I mean,
yeah, that's what they're using. There is no, he didn't gather any people. Nothing happened. Like there wasn't like an attempt to. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. 7 months in solitary confinement. This is wrong. I don't care if I disagree with anybody on either end. It's wrong, right? Like this is, again, very draconian. Our civil liberties and our civil rights are being trampled on every single day in this country. And people are still busy pointing the finger at the other, whether it's the immigrant, whether it's the Trump supporter, whether it's the Black Lives Matter protester. They're so busy fighting each other and not understanding like these people are trying to stop anything that goes against the narrative, whether it's the narrative of the left or the narrative of the right. They're trying to stop it. And we need to fight that instead of like this bullshit that's happening. So that's that section.
It makes you think that the fact that the Intercept came out with that article and the way they framed it, you know what I'm saying, is that there is something going on behind the scenes where it is definitely theater and a push of propaganda to get people pitted against each other, period. You sense that in every step of the way. When you watch any media whatsoever, I watch a lot of this. My mom watches a lot of this Newsmax and OAN and a little Fox here and there. Now she's obviously matriculated onto the newer channels. But in those channels, they never sit down and have the debates and talk stuff out and get to see all the sides. It's the same polarizing, oh, let's go over what the Democrats are doing wrong and Joe Biden is doing wrong. Then you turn on CNN and MSNBC just for shits and giggle, and they're still bringing up Trump. They're still trying to string out January 6th. So it's, we have a lot of forces that are working behind the scenes against us, fam, trying to pit people against each other. So, going out and talking to these people and people you disagree with, trying to understand where they come from and have a reasonable conversation with them, that's what needs to be done. We need to make sure that we push discourse all over the place. Let's push conversations, especially with those who think differently than us. I'm sorry for rambling on.